The morning light filtered through the massive viewing windows of Proxima Station, casting long shadows across the polished metal floors. Commander Hyuk walked through the corridors with confident strides, his forearms carrying various data tablets and teaching materials. Today was an important day. He would teach the young cadets about one of the most dangerous topics in the galaxy, how to survive an encounter with a human. Hyuk had been teaching at the Galactic Military Academy for 15 cycles now. He knew his subject well, or at least he believed he did. The information about humans came from old reports, documents written when humans first appeared in space many years ago. Back then, they seemed weak and fragile compared to other species. Hyuk had never questioned these reports. Why would he? They came from official sources. The lecture hall was already filling with students when Hyuk arrived. Young aliens from dozens of different worlds sat in the curved rows of seats. There were Zentari with their long tentacles, Lithians with their crystal-like bodies that caught the light, Vexillians whose skin glowed with soft colors, and many others. They all chatted excitedly, knowing today's lesson would be particularly interesting. Hyuk placed his materials on the podium and looked out at the assembled students. His eyes swept across the room, counting heads and noting which species were present. Then he noticed someone sitting in the very back row. A human. Hyuk paused for just a moment. It was unusual, but not unheard of. The Academy had exchange programs with many worlds, including Earth. The human sat quietly, dressed in a simple gray uniform, watching the front of the room with calm eyes. The commander decided to proceed as planned. Having a human in the class might even be educational for the other students. They could observe a real specimen. Hyuk activated the holographic display, and a three-dimensional image of a human body appeared above the podium, slowly rotating for all to see. Good morning, class. Today we begin our unit on threat assessment and combat scenarios. Our focus will be on humans, classified by the Galactic Council as a Class 7 threat species. Hyuk's voice carried easily through the hall. The students immediately stopped their conversations and began taking notes on their various devices. The hologram zoomed in on different parts of the human anatomy as Hyuk pointed to them with one of his hands. Now, observe the structure carefully. Humans are bipedal, meaning they walk on only 2 legs. This already puts them at a disadvantage for balance and speed compared to many of you. They have only 2 arms, limiting their ability to multitask in combat situations. A Zentari student named Rin raised a tentacle. Commander, if they are so limited, why are they classified as a threat? The question was innocent, born of genuine curiosity. Hyuk smiled, pleased to address this common misconception. An excellent question. Humans are classified as threats not because of their physical capabilities, but because of their unpredictability and their tendency toward violence. They are an emotional species, prone to irrational decisions. However, in a controlled combat scenario, they have clear weaknesses we can exploit. Hyuk changed the hologram to highlight specific areas of the human body in red. These are the primary vulnerability points. The throat, here, is completely exposed and contains vital structures for breathing and blood flow. A strike here will incapacitate a human quickly. The eyes are soft and unprotected, unlike many species who have protective membranes or hard shells. Even a small amount of pressure or irritation can blind them. The students leaned forward, absorbing every word. Some were recording the lecture, others were sketching the highlighted areas in their notebooks. In the back row, the human, whose name was Day, continued to watch silently. His face showed no emotion. He simply observed and occasionally made notes on a small data pad. Hyuk continued his lecture, growing more animated as he spoke. The human skeletal system is also relatively weak. Their bones can break under significant pressure. Focus on the joints, the knees, elbows, and shoulders. These are held together by soft tissue rather than the reinforced structures many of you possess. Disable the joints and you disable the human. A Lithian student named Bora, whose crystalline body refracted the light into small rainbows, raised a delicate hand. What about their internal organs, Commander? Are they well protected? Bora's voice had a musical quality, like wind chimes. Another good question. Hyuk pulled up a cross-section view of the human torso. As you can see, most of their vital organs are contained in this cavity, protected only by ribs, thin bones that can be broken. The heart and lungs are here. A strong impact to this area, what humans call the solar plexus, will cause immediate breathing difficulty and disorientation. They also have a single brain located in the skull. Damage to the head is often fatal or permanently disabling. The lecture continued for another hour. Hyuk discussed human sensory limitations, how they could only see a narrow band of light compared to other species, how their hearing was limited, how they lacked natural armor or weapons like claws or venomous stings. He explained their slow healing processes and their need for regular sleep. Throughout all of this, Day sat quietly in the back row. He did not interrupt. He did not raise objections. He simply listened and took notes. His expression remained neutral, almost pleasant. To anyone watching closely, there might have been the smallest hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth, but it was so slight, it could have been imagination. As the session neared its end, Hyuk brought up a training dummy that roughly approximated human proportions. He demonstrated various strikes and holds, showing the students exactly where and how to apply force for maximum effect. The dummy's head snapped back under a precise blow. Its joints bent at angles that would disable a real opponent. Remember, Hyuk said as he stepped back from the dummy, humans are classified as dangerous because they are unpredictable and often violent, not because they are physically superior. In a fair fight with proper training, any of you should be able to neutralize a human threat. They are essentially a species that survived through luck and primitive cunning rather than natural advantages. The students nodded, satisfied with their new knowledge. They had learned something important today. They felt more prepared, more confident. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and knowing how to handle threats was crucial for any military officer. In the back row, Day saved his notes and powered down his datapad. The lecture was over. Soon, very soon, it would be time to speak. But not yet. He had learned long ago that timing was everything. Let them finish. Let them feel confident in their knowledge. Then, and only then, would he offer his corrections. He stood slowly as the other students began to file out, and he waited patiently for his moment to come. Commander Hyuk felt good about how the morning session had gone. The students were engaged and learning well. Now as the afternoon session began, it was time to go deeper into the practical aspects of combat with humans. He pulled up new diagrams and combat scenarios on the holographic display. Let us continue with pressure points and neural pathways. Hyuk's voice was confident and clear. Humans have several nerve clusters that, when struck correctly, can cause immediate pain and loss of motor function. The sides of the neck, the inner elbow, behind the knee, these areas are poorly defended and highly sensitive. A student near the front, a young Vexillian named Tae, whose skin glowed pale blue with curiosity, raised a hand. Commander, what about their pain tolerance? Do humans feel pain the same way we do? The question made several other students look up with interest. Pain response was an important factor in combat. Hyuk nodded approvingly at the question. Excellent point. Humans actually have a relatively low pain threshold compared to many combat species. They are, as I mentioned, an emotional species. Pain frightens them. They panic easily. When injured, a human's first instinct is often to retreat or freeze, rather than continue fighting. This is a significant weakness you can exploit. The students typed notes rapidly. This was valuable information. Hyuk moved to the training dummy again and demonstrated a series of strikes. First, a blow to the solar plexus. Watch how this disrupts breathing. Then a strike to the temple. This can cause disorientation or unconsciousness. Finally, pressure on the carotid artery here cuts blood flow to the brain. Rin, the Zentari student, waved several tentacles for attention. But Commander, I have heard stories about humans in battle. They say humans can be very dangerous when cornered. Is this not true? There was uncertainty in Rin's voice, as if the stories conflicted with what was being taught. Hyuk smiled tolerantly. Stories are often exaggerated. Yes, humans can be violent and unpredictable. This is why they are classified as a threat. But understand that unpredictability is not the same as capability. A panicking animal is dangerous because you cannot predict what it will do, not because it is strong. Humans react to fear with aggression sometimes, but this aggression is unfocused and desperate. A trained soldier like yourselves will always prevail against desperate flailing. The explanation seemed to satisfy most of the students. In the back of the room, Day continued to sit quietly. His posture was relaxed, almost casual. He had his arms crossed loosely, and he watched the demonstration with what appeared to be mild interest. Nothing in his demeanor suggested disagreement or concern. He could have been watching a documentary about an unfamiliar species. Hyuk continued the lesson, warming to his subject. Now let us discuss human limitations in extended combat. Humans require approximately 8 hours of sleep every 24-hour cycle. Without this sleep, their performance degrades rapidly. After 72 hours without sleep, they begin to hallucinate and lose cognitive function. They also need regular meals. Their metabolism is inefficient. They cannot go more than a few days without water or a few weeks without food. Bora, the Lithian student, raised a crystalline hand again. What about their healing? If we injure a human but do not kill them, how long before they recover? Her voice chimed like bells, curious and thoughtful. Another excellent question. Hyuk pulled up a medical chart. Human healing is slow compared to many species. A broken bone takes weeks or months to heal properly. Deep wounds require medical intervention, or they risk infection. Humans are very susceptible to infections, actually. Their immune systems are decent but not exceptional. An injured human is essentially out of combat for an extended period. The lecture moved into environmental factors. Hyuk explained how humans were adapted to a very narrow range of conditions. They need oxygen-rich atmosphere. They cannot survive in extreme heat or cold without protection. They cannot breathe underwater. They cannot see well in the dark. Their sense of smell is almost useless for tracking or detecting danger. Compare this to yourselves. Hyuk gestured at the class. Many of you can survive in varied atmospheres. Some of you have natural armor or weapons. Some can regenerate lost limbs. Some have enhanced senses that let you detect threats humans would never notice. In almost every measurable category, humans are inferior. Then why are they in space at all? Asked a small student from a species Hyuk did not immediately recognize. If they are so weak, how did they become a spacefaring civilization? Hyuk had an answer ready. Tool use and social cooperation. Humans are intelligent, I will give them that. They are excellent at creating technology to compensate for their physical weakness. They work together in groups effectively, and they reproduce quickly so their numbers can be substantial. But individually, in a combat scenario, these advantages mean little. The commander activated a simulation on the screen. It showed a tactical scenario with a human opponent. Now watch. This is a standard combat program. The human is armed with basic equipment. Observe how the simulation calculates victory conditions. The hologram showed various strategies, all of which resulted in the defeat of the human fighter within minutes. See how the human tires quickly? See how they cannot maintain speed or strength for long? Their muscles fatigue rapidly. They breathe heavily. They slow down. Patience and steady pressure will defeat them every time. Hyuk paused the simulation at a moment, showing the human on the ground, defeated. Tae, the Vexillian student, looked troubled. But Commander, if they are so easy to defeat, why does the Council classify them as Class 7 threats? That is a high classification. Surely there must be something dangerous about them. Hyuk waved a hand dismissively. Politics and caution. When humans first entered galactic space, there were several violent incidents, misunderstandings mostly, but they caused casualties. The Council erred on the side of caution with the classification. Also, humans travel in groups and have weapons. An armed group of humans is certainly dangerous. But we are discussing individual combat capability today. The students seemed to accept this explanation. Hyuk felt satisfied. He was giving them good, solid information based on official records. These young cadets would be safer for knowing human weaknesses. They would be prepared if they ever faced human opponents. Remember, class, the key to defeating a human is to strike quickly at their vulnerable points. Maintain pressure and do not give them time to use tools or call for help. Isolated and under direct attack, they will fall quickly. Hyuk tapped the podium for emphasis. In the back row, Dae uncrossed his arms and leaned forward slightly. He made another note on his data pad. His expression had not changed throughout the entire lecture. He appeared calm, patient, and perhaps just slightly amused. He knew something the others did not. He knew the truth, and soon he would share it. But not yet. The lesson was not quite finished. Hyuk glanced at the chronometer. We have time for a few more questions before we break. Who has questions about anything we have covered so far? Several hands and appendages went up. The commander smiled and began calling on students one by one, answering their questions with confidence and authority, never once doubting the information he was providing. The final part of the lecture approached as the station's artificial sun began its slow dimming cycle. Commander Hyuk had been teaching for several hours now, and the students were full of information about human vulnerabilities. But some of them still had doubts. They had heard stories, tales from other worlds about human soldiers and explorers. These stories did not match what they were learning today. Rin the Zentari raised multiple tentacles seeking attention. Commander, I must ask again. My spawning parents served on a merchant vessel that encountered human pirates once. The parents said the humans boarded their ship and fought for 6 hours straight without stopping. They said the humans seemed to ignore injuries. How is this possible if humans are as weak as the reports suggest? Hyuk considered the question carefully. He did not want to dismiss the student's family experience, but he also needed to maintain the lesson's integrity. Your parent likely encountered humans under the influence of stimulants or combat drugs. Humans do sometimes use chemicals to artificially enhance their performance. This can make them ignore pain temporarily. However, these drugs have severe side effects and the humans crash hard afterward. It is not a sustainable combat strategy. But they fought for 6 hours, Rin persisted. That seems like more than temporary enhancement. The tentacles waved uncertainly, seeking clarity. Pirates are desperate criminals. Hyuk's voice was firm. Desperation can make any species fight beyond their normal limits temporarily. But again, this is not representative of typical human capability. In a controlled military scenario, such as you will encounter in your careers, you will not be facing desperate pirates. You will be facing ordinary humans who can be defeated using the techniques I have taught you. Another student spoke up, a young officer from a heavy-gravity world. I heard that humans once held a fortified position for months against superior numbers. They called it the Siege of Kepler Station. They say human defenders fought until they ran out of ammunition, then fought with makeshift weapons, then fought with their bare hands. Is this true? Hyuk knew of this incident. It was famous or perhaps infamous in certain military circles. That was an exceptional situation with exceptional individuals. Elite human soldiers, probably enhanced with technology and training far beyond normal humans. You cannot judge an entire species by its elite warriors. That would be like judging your species solely by your most decorated generals. Bora, the Lithian student whose crystalline form sparkled in the lecture hall lights, chimed in with her musical voice. Commander, there is something that confuses me. If humans are weak individually and only dangerous in groups with weapons, why do they have so many military victories in their history? I have studied the records. Human forces have won battles against species that should have superior advantages. Hyuk felt a slight twinge of irritation, but kept his voice calm. Strategy and tactics. Humans are clever, I have acknowledged this. They use terrain well. They employ deception. They have good command structures. But these are factors separate from individual combat capability, which is what this course focuses on. Yes, human armies can win battles through superior planning, but a human soldier in hand-to-hand combat has clear physiological weaknesses. Tay the Vexillian, whose bioluminescent skin now showed patterns of deep thought, asked a different question. What about human recovery from injury? I have read medical journals that describe cases of humans surviving injuries that would kill most species. Trauma that should be fatal. How do they survive if they are so fragile? Medical intervention. Hyuk pulled up a new display showing human emergency medical technology. Human medicine is actually quite advanced. They have had to develop it because they are so fragile. Their doctors are skilled at keeping damaged humans alive. But survival with medical help is different from combat capability. A human who survives a fatal injury in a hospital is not the same as a human fighting on a battlefield. The students continued to probe, asking about various aspects of human capability that seemed to contradict the picture of weakness Hyuk was painting. Each time the commander had an explanation. Combat drugs, desperation, elite soldiers, medical technology, advanced tactics, luck. He had an answer for everything. What about their adaptation? Another student asked. I heard humans can survive on worlds with different gravity, different atmosphere composition, different temperature ranges. They have colonies on many types of planets. Does this not show they are more resilient than you suggest? Technology again. Hyuk was beginning to sound a bit defensive. Humans use suits, habitats, and genetic modifications to survive in different environments. This is not natural resilience. Strip away their technology and they are just as vulnerable as I have described. Perhaps even more so, since they rely so heavily on their tools. In the back row, Day continued to listen to every question and every answer. His expression remained neutral, but he was paying very close attention now. The students were asking good questions. They were thinking critically. They sensed that something did not add up. The official report said one thing, but reality seemed to whisper something different. The students felt this tension but could not quite identify it. Rin would not let go of the question about endurance. Commander, with respect, 6 hours of combat is not a drug effect. My parents said the humans showed no signs of chemical enhancement. They just kept fighting. They got tired, yes, but they did not stop. They did not give up. Even when injured, they continued. Explain this, please. Hyuk's forearms gestured in a way that showed his growing frustration. What you are describing is stubbornness, not strength. Humans are notoriously stubborn. They do not know when to quit. This can make them dangerous in the way a cornered pest animal is dangerous. But it is not a military advantage. A stubborn fighter is just a fighter who takes longer to put down. The outcome is the same. Is stubbornness not a survival trait? Bora asked innocently. If a human will not stop fighting even when losing, does that not make them more dangerous, not less? Her crystal body reflected light in patterns that suggested confusion. There is a difference between being dangerous and being capable. Hyuk's voice was sharp now. A wounded animal that refuses to die is dangerous because it thrashes unpredictably. But a trained soldier will still prevail. The technique remains the same. Strike the vulnerable points. Disable the human's ability to fight. Their stubbornness becomes irrelevant if they physically cannot continue. The students exchanged glances. They could feel tension in the room now. Their teacher was confident, but their questions seemed to bother him. The more they asked, the more his explanations sounded like excuses rather than facts. Still, he was the instructor. He had the official records. He had years of teaching experience. They had to trust his knowledge. One final question came from a student near the middle of the room. Commander Hyuk, have you ever fought a human yourself? Do you have personal experience with human combat capability? The question was asked respectfully, but it hung in the air like a challenge. Hyuk paused. No, I have not personally engaged humans in combat. My knowledge comes from military records, official reports, and established training protocols. These sources are far more reliable than individual experience, which can be colored by circumstance and emotion. I teach from verified data, not personal anecdote. The answer was technically correct, but somehow unsatisfying. The students fell silent. They had learned much today, but they also had more questions than when they started. The official information conflicted with rumors and stories they had heard. Something did not fit together properly. In the back of the room, Day finally allowed himself a small, visible smile. The commander had done his job well, presenting the official view. The students had done their job well, asking challenging questions. Now it was almost time for Day to do his job. Almost time to provide some corrections based on actual experience rather than old reports. He checked his chronometer. Just a few more minutes, then the real education would begin. Word spread through Proxima Station faster than anyone expected. A human was going to run the advanced combat simulator. The exchange officer, who had sat quietly through Commander Hyuk's lecture, was about to demonstrate what humans could actually do. Within an hour, the observation gallery above the combat simulator was packed with curious cadets, instructors, and off-duty personnel. The combat simulator occupied a large chamber in the training wing. It could create holographic environments and opponents that felt real to anyone inside. The system tracked movement, calculated damage, and adjusted difficulty based on performance. It was designed to push even the best fighters to their absolute limits. Day stood in the center of the chamber, wearing a simple training suit. He carried no weapons. Around him, the simulator was generating a hostile environment. It was a standard hostage rescue scenario, the kind used for final examinations. Multiple armed opponents, civilians to protect, limited time, and random complications. The scenario had a very low success rate. Most cadets failed it completely. In the observation gallery, Rin the Zentari leaned forward with several tentacles pressed against the viewing glass. Bora's crystalline body refracted the light as she shifted nervously. Tay's bioluminescent skin pulsed with anticipation. Commander Hugh stood to one side, his forearms crossed, watching carefully. He had activated the simulator at standard difficulty. No special treatment. The simulation began. 3 holographic opponents materialized around Day, armed with energy weapons. The room transformed into a damaged building with debris scattered everywhere. Smoke filled the air. Somewhere in the virtual environment, hostages waited to be rescued. A timer appeared on the observation screen showing how long Day had to complete the mission. Day moved immediately. He did not charge forward or try to fight directly. Instead, he rolled behind cover, grabbed a piece of broken pipe from the simulated debris and came up throwing. The pipe spun through the air and struck the first opponent's weapon, knocking it aside just as they fired. The energy bolt went wide. Before the opponent could recover, Day was already moving again. He used the smoke as cover, his footsteps nearly silent despite his speed. He came at the second opponent from an unexpected angle, using the environment itself as a weapon. A sheet of broken wall material became a shield. A support beam became a lever to trip the opponent. The students in the gallery watched in stunned silence. This was not how the simulator usually went. Most fighters tried to use strength or speed to overcome the scenario. Day was using strategy and adaptation. He turned everything around him into a tool or weapon. Nothing was wasted. Every movement had purpose. 5 minutes into the scenario, the simulator increased the difficulty. This was automatic, designed to test how fighters performed under pressure. More opponents appeared. The building began collapsing, adding environmental hazards. The hostages started panicking, making them harder to protect. Most cadets failed within seconds of this difficulty increase. Day did not fail. He adapted. When the ceiling started falling, he used the falling debris as weapons and distractions. When more opponents appeared, he positioned himself so they got in each other's way. He moved constantly, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted effectively. His breathing was controlled and steady despite the intense activity. Then the simulator added injuries. Day's left arm was marked as damaged by a grazing shot. The system would simulate pain and reduced function. Most fighters slowed down significantly when injured. Their performance dropped as they compensated for the damage. Day did not slow down. If anything, he became more efficient. His movements tightened. He stopped using fancy techniques and focused on effectiveness. One arm was enough. He continued fighting, continued adapting, continued winning. The injured arm just meant he had to think differently about how to approach each problem. Bora's musical voice broke the silence in the observation gallery. He is not stopping. He is injured and he is not stopping. There was wonder in her tone and also a note of fear. That is what I tried to tell you. Commander Hugh's voice was quiet, almost reverent. He does not stop because pain does not stop him. Look at his eyes. They are focused, clear. He is not feeling the injury right now. His body is suppressing it. The scenario continued escalating. The simulator kept adding complications, trying to find Day's breaking point. Equipment failures, more enemies, collapsing structures, limited visibility, time pressure, every challenge that would normally force a fighter to withdraw or fail. Day met each challenge and overcame it. Not through superior strength, he was not stronger than most of the aliens watching. Not through special abilities, he had no natural weapons or armor. He won through relentless problem-solving and absolute refusal to give up. Every setback was just another problem to solve. Every obstacle was just another tool to use. Rin's tentacles were trembling. I understand now. I understand what my parents saw. Humans do not fight like other species. They fight like the universe itself is an opponent to be defeated. They do not accept limits. After 15 minutes, something unusual happened. The simulation suddenly stopped. Day stood in the center of the chamber, breathing heavily but still alert, still ready. The holographic environment faded away. An automated voice announced that the scenario was terminating early due to performance parameters exceeding program limits. The observation gallery was completely silent. Day looked up at the viewing window and gave a small nod. Then he walked calmly toward the exit. His injured arm hung naturally now. The simulated damage ended with the program. He showed no signs of the intense combat he had just experienced except for slightly elevated breathing. Commander Hayuk left the gallery and met Day outside the simulator chamber. The human was drinking water from a container, rehydrating after the exercise. The commander approached slowly, all four arms hanging at his sides in a gesture of respect. I owe you an apology. Hyuk's voice was sincere. I taught my students incorrect information. Dangerous information. If they had encountered a real human in combat based on what I taught them, they might not have survived. You taught them what you knew from the available records. Day finished his water. The records were incomplete, not false. You could not know what you were never told. But now you know. Now they know. Will you help me develop a new curriculum? Hyuk asked. One that accurately represents human capabilities? The students need to understand what they might really face. I would be happy to help. Day smiled. But I suggest we change the focus of the course. Not how to kill a human, but why humans earned their threat classification. Understanding is more valuable than technique. Hyuk nodded in agreement. Yes, understanding. He paused, then asked the question that had been bothering him since the demonstration ended. In the simulator, you never seemed worried. Even when injured, even when overwhelmed, you appeared calm. Why? Day considered the question carefully before answering. Because worry does not help. Humans learned a long time ago that panic is the real enemy. The situation is what it is. You can accept it and adapt, or you can panic and fail. We evolved to accept bad situations and keep moving forward. It is probably our most dangerous trait. The most dangerous trait is not strength or speed or weapons, Hyuk said thoughtfully. It is the ability to keep fighting when everything says you should stop. That is what makes humans truly terrifying, exactly. Day agreed. Now you understand why we are Class 7 threats. Not because we are the strongest or fastest, but because we simply do not stop. The two officers walked together toward the academic offices to begin work on the revised curriculum. Behind them, students poured out of the observation gallery talking excitedly about what they had witnessed. The lesson had been learned. Not the lesson Commander Hyuk had planned to teach, but a far more valuable one. They now understood that old reports and comfortable assumptions could be deadly. They understood that humans were not weak, just different, and that difference made them formidable. In the following weeks, Day would help revise the entire combat training program. He would teach classes alongside Hyuk, sharing real information about human capabilities, limitations, and most importantly, human mindset. The students would learn to respect humans not as inferior beings to be defeated, but as resilient survivors who turned every disadvantage into a weapon. And the story of the human who waited patiently through an entire lecture about killing humans, only to correct every single point afterward, would become a legend at the Galactic Military Academy. A reminder that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the room is the one sitting quietly in the back, waiting for everyone else to finish talking before offering a different perspective. Commander Hyuk dismissed the class with a wave of his multiple arms. The students began gathering their materials and filing toward the exits, talking among themselves in low voices. They discussed the lesson, debated the answers to their questions, and wondered about the contradictions they had noticed. Most of them left within a few minutes, heading to their next classes or to the meal halls. But Day did not leave. He stood up from his seat in the back row and began walking down the stepped aisle toward the front of the lecture hall. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. Each step was deliberate and unhurried. Hyuk was organizing his teaching materials at the podium, sorting data tablets and disconnecting hologram equipment. The commander noticed the approaching figure and looked up. For a moment, he had forgotten about the human observer in his class. Now he felt a small flicker of uncertainty. The human had sat through the entire lecture without saying a word. What did he want now? Was he offended by the lesson? Hyuk straightened himself to his full height, which was considerable. Day reached the podium and stopped a respectful distance away. He stood at a relaxed attention, the kind of posture that military personnel across the galaxy recognized as professional courtesy. His hands were empty and visible. His expression was calm and polite. Commander Hyuk. Day's voice was quiet and respectful. Thank you for allowing me to observe your class today. I am Day, Exchange Officer from Earth Defense Forces. I have been assigned to Proxima Station for cultural and educational exchange purposes. Hyuk relaxed slightly. The human seemed friendly enough. Yes, I saw you were present. I hope the lecture was informative. We run a thorough program here. The students need to understand potential threats they might encounter in their service. Day nodded slowly. It was certainly informative. The students asked excellent questions. You have taught them well to think critically. He paused, then continued in the same polite tone. Commander, would you permit me to offer some observations? There are a few points in your lecture that I believe might benefit from correction. Hyuk felt a spark of defensiveness. Corrections. His lecture was based on official military records and established training doctrine. But he was a professional educator. If there were errors, he should know about them. Very well. What corrections do you suggest? Day pulled out his small datapad and glanced at the notes he had taken. Perhaps we could start with the section about human pain tolerance. You mentioned that humans have a low pain threshold and panic easily when injured. This information is not entirely accurate. Hyuk crossed two of his arms. The reports clearly state that humans are emotional and reactive to physical trauma. This is documented. The reports are old. Day's voice remained calm and factual. They were written based on observations of humans in civilian situations, not combat scenarios. When a human is injured in a real fight, their body releases a chemical cocktail: adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, and several others. These chemicals do something remarkable. They suppress pain almost completely. A human can continue fighting with broken bones, torn muscles, even lost limbs, and not feel it until the danger has passed. Hyuk blinked his multiple eyes. That seems improbable. Pain is a protective mechanism. Ignoring it would lead to further injury. Yes, it does lead to further injury. That is exactly the point. Day looked directly at the commander. Human evolution did not optimize for long-term health. It optimized for survival in the immediate moment. A human who can ignore a broken leg and keep running will escape the predator. They might damage the leg worse, but they will be alive to heal later. This trait carried over into combat. Injured humans become more dangerous, not less, because they feel no pain stopping them. The commander was silent for a moment, processing this. What about the vulnerability points you mentioned? The throat, the eyes, the joints? Those are accurate anatomically. Day agreed. But you overestimate how easy they are to strike. Human reflexes are faster than your reports indicate. We have a nervous system that prioritizes speed over precision. When something approaches our eyes, we blink and move in milliseconds. When something threatens our throat, we tuck our chin instinctively. These are automatic responses that do not require conscious thought. Hyuk felt his confidence beginning to erode. But surely a trained fighter can overcome reflexes. The techniques I demonstrated are standard across the galaxy. Against most species, yes. Day shifted his weight slightly. But humans have another advantage you did not mention. We are persistence predators. Do you know what that means? Hyuk shook his head and Day continued. It means we evolve by chasing prey until it collapses from exhaustion. We cannot run as fast as most animals, but we can run longer, much longer. Human endurance is actually extraordinary by galactic standards. You mentioned needing 8 hours of sleep. Hyuk tried to hold on to his previous assertions. We prefer 8 hours. We can function on much less. Day's voice was patient, like a teacher correcting a student gently. Military training teaches humans to operate effectively on 2 to 4 hours of sleep per night for extended periods. Some special forces can stay awake and combat ready for over a week with minimal rest. Yes, performance degrades, but degraded human performance is still formidable. Hyuk sat down heavily in the instructor's chair. This was a lot of information that contradicted everything he had taught. What about healing? You cannot dispute that humans heal slowly. Compared to some species, yes. Day acknowledged this point. We do not regenerate limbs, but human healing has a quality you overlooked. It is very thorough. When we heal, scar tissue forms that is often stronger than the original flesh. Broken bones heal denser than before. Our immune systems learn from every infection, building a library of defenses. A human who has survived many injuries is not weaker. They are tougher, more resistant, harder to damage. The commander looked at his teaching materials with new doubt. But the official records, the classification reports, surely they cannot be completely wrong. He sounded less certain now. They are not wrong exactly. They are incomplete. Day put away his datapad. The early reports observed humans in controlled, peaceful situations. They saw us when we were not threatened, when our combat systems were not active. It would be like judging your species' capability by watching civilians at a market. You would miss everything important. Hyuk was quiet for a long moment. Then what about the stubbornness? I said humans do not know when to quit. Was that at least accurate? That part was completely accurate. Day smiled slightly. But you framed it as a weakness. It is actually one of our greatest strengths. Humans do not surrender easily. We fight when we are outnumbered, We fight when we are outmatched. We fight when logical analysis says we cannot win. Sometimes we lose, but sometimes, often enough to matter, we find a way to survive. That is why your student Rin's parents saw humans fighting for 6 hours. It was not drugs. It was not desperation. It was just humans being human. Commander Hyuk looked at the human standing before him with entirely new eyes. Everything he thought he knew had been carefully dismantled in just a few minutes of conversation. The human had been polite, factual, and devastatingly thorough in his corrections. "I think I owe my students a revised lecture," Hyuk said quietly. "Perhaps you would be willing to help me prepare it." "I would be happy to," Dai replied. "But first, perhaps a demonstration would be more effective than words. Your combat simulator is available, I believe." Hyuk nodded slowly, understanding where this was going. A demonstration. Yes, that would be educational indeed.